Hopefully everyone's here for the employer branding webinar. We do have quite a bit to cover, so we are just going to get cracking. We have quite a few people that are requesting for recordings, so we are recording this. Don't worry, you can still make horrible jokes. I will. I mean horrible as in very poor and cheesy. I don't want anyone making inappropriate jokes. Not cool. But inappropriate, cheesy jokes are still welcome, but please do give your input still. We are going to share the recording onto them, and equally, if you'd like a copy of it to remind you of anything that we covered today, please just let me know and we'll share them over. Before I forget, a big thank you as well. So the proceeds of your tickets we donate directly to Caritas. So Caritas Salford are an excellent charity that we work closely with to help people live with dignity. So they've got loads and loads of projects on, and I'm really proud to support them. So if you don't know much about them, please take a look and do a little bit of research. So can I just check everyone can see my slides? Yes. Yeah, great. Ian, don't worry, know about you skipping out early. All good. Got an email. Thank you very much. Equally, if anyone else needs to jump off at any point, so just let us know. We'll make sure we catch you up on anything else so you don't miss it. So I'm going to jump in and introduce my lovely fellow speakers. So I should probably start with myself because I'm always really bad at doing this. So I'm Daniela, for those who don't know me. I'm head of client service at MP&Co, but I'm a marketing strategist. Essentially, I used to freelance, do a lot of affiliate marketing with businesses of all sizes. I kind of honed in on SMEs. However, I did work for bigger corporates, doing a lot of affiliate marketing with Hard Rock, Odeon, and the likes of that with events. Started working with Mike about 5 years ago with the agency and absolutely loved it. So been on the journey of becoming a little bit more niche and going just for purpose-driven businesses from now. My role within the business is supporting the team with strategy and obviously making sure that day-to-day ops kind of run smoothly. So really excited to be with you today and to be joined by Leanne and Dave. So I'm going to pass over to Leanne to say hello, introduce herself and explain a little bit about why she's joining us today.
Hi, thanks very much, Danny. Morning. Yep, as Danny said, my name's Leanne. I'm the Ops Director of We Are Adam. So for anyone who's not familiar with us, we are a specialist search and selection headhunter recruiter, basically. We do primarily C-suite, senior leadership positions. We do also do quite a bit of work on some very sort of niche, hard to find skill sets as well. My own personal role in the business is basically anything that's not recruitment. So day-to-day running of the business, but I spend quite a lot of my time actually working with and analysing a lot of our market intel, creating reports for our clients and so on. So I'm hoping that today I'm going to be able to share some of that information and that data and insight with you guys to help you with your talent acquisition strategy.
Excellent, thanks Leanne. And Dave, if you could do the same, give us a little intro.
Yeah, sure. Morning everyone. So I'm Dave, I'm the MD of Dawn. We're a brand agency, so we specialise in developing brand strategies and brand identities for organisations. Majority of the work will reside in a rebrand, probably companies that maybe 5-6 years and above. We will do brand projects for kind of new products or new startups, but the best work is really where people grow into themselves and realise they actually need to define who they are after 5 years of trading, and we'll develop the strategy and the values and the purpose for the organisation, and then we'll develop the identity to reflect that over time. Currently in my 28th year, so 28 years of studying branding. So hopefully I can bring something to the table today and help people to develop their brand further.
Great, thanks Dave. I thought you should have just left it as you're in your 28th year and we can say happy 29th birthday later on, but never mind.
No, I think the grey hair gives it away that I'm definitely not that age.
We could have left it as that. No one would have good. Today, just as a bit of a how it's going to run, we've got a couple of live polls. I have made them mandatory, so in order to get it off your screen, you will have to give me an answer. Please make it as honest as possible. We're all friends here, and you're not going to be judged. I might jokingly call you out, but everything in jest and all to support, and as much honesty basically means that we can support you at the right level. I recommend if you've got a pen and paper or a notepad or anything like that, back of an old envelope to scribble a couple of notes on. You don't need to take notes throughout, but we do have a couple of activities where I think it would be useful for you to just jot a couple of bits down to come back to so that you can action them later on. If you've got questions, please pop them in the chat as we go. It might mean that we answer them as we're going, or we might recognise actually we cover that later on, so we'll leave it for an appropriate time, but please do pop them in and then you won't have them whizzing around your head, essentially. And stay hydrated and caffeinated. I appreciate it's morning, it's Thursday, and it's a big push before a bank holiday weekend. So if you do need to go and grab a coffee or fill up, I love how Ian's just taking a swig now, just to always top student Ian. There he is. Very nice, some lovely branded water bottles going on there. But yeah, please do feel free to just make sure you're still on mute and go boil up the kettle. We don't mind you taking us on a little tour of your house if you need to go and do that. So yeah, today's about collaboration. So please do ask any questions, provide examples, spark debate. If there's anything that's really pressing in your head, we don't want you to have to sit there silently. We are hopefully very approachable, so please do message. I am also very grateful to be joined by Lucy, who's done a lot of work on this. Lucy, give everyone a wave. Lucy's done a lot of work on bringing this together as well. She's also within my team a brilliant marketing generalist. So if you need anything as well, please feel free to send her a message on the chat and she'll be able to support with you. Okay, without further ado, I am going to jump off. What we're covering today, obviously myself, I'm a marketing generalist. I'm going to be giving a little introduction to employer brand. Why it's so important, what we're going to be using it for, a little bit of a taster of what Leanne has for you later, and also helping you kind of create some content ideas to help bring it to life through marketing. Dave's going to be giving us a run through of branding in how it should be affecting decision making, how to present visually, and also making sure that we're doing everything with values and purpose so it feels on brand. To follow up and to bring it all to a close, we're going to be closing with the business case for employer brand. So Leanne's going to be joining to share. She's got absolutely loads of stats. She really underdid it before. I think that's really, really exciting section where you'll be able to see the true impact, why you need to implement and why you need to listen up. So there will be some time at the end for question and answers. So as I mentioned, whack them in the chat, we'll address them then, but also a chance for you to have some other questions and a little bit of time with us as well. So hopefully that's what you were expecting to see today. If not, feel free to unmute yourselves and let us know. Moment of silence. This is like a wedding where you say, does anyone have anything? No? Cool. Right, let's get started then. So we're going to get started with a poll. Does your organisation have an employer brand? So this is where my technical prowess is not going to show because for some reason I can't see the poll bit that I was expecting to see. So this is going well. There we go. Hopefully you have a poll appearing on your screen now. Excellent, I can see one coming through. So I've just noticed a horrible spelling mistake that I put planning, and it's going to bug me, but never mind. We're all human. I think we're waiting for one more. So it looks like everyone is pretty much recognizing that they do have an employer brand, but it needs work. which I'm pleased for. If someone said yes, but it's really strong, that'd be exciting, but they'd probably have a lot more challenging questions for us later on. However, we do have a no, and we're not planning to develop one. I do feel like this is Lucy pulling my leg, but if it's not, this is exciting. Mainly because, bear with me a moment. My slides will catch up with me. Did we trick you? Everyone has an employer brand. Regardless of whether you're putting any effort into it, people are creating a perception about you. People are having thoughts about you. So I would like to question, is yours getting enough attention? However, we can't have an employer brand webinar essentially without telling you what it is. Hopefully you have some understanding. However, if you don't, then we're going to go from the top. So an employer brand, I've got the CIPD, I've got probably the most basic definition I could find, which I thought was really good. So an employer brand describes how an organisation markets what it has to offer to potential and existing employees. However, I think that when you look into brand in general, like this lovely image that Lucy has created for us, it's kind of the overlap of marketing strategy and people strategy. So we've got branding as a whole, which is obviously the recognizable identity that people draw, distinguishes you from others within the industry. Dave will share a bit more later on about how you can bring that to life. However, employer brand is basically branding applied to HR. So it's that crossover between it. And naturally, there's a lot of different elements to it, which includes things you can control, which obviously we want to get you started on ASAP. Things you can influence, which again, want to get you started on and to consider and start to think about what the impact is that you're drawing. And there are things that you can indirectly influence as well. So I'm going to touch on that in the next slide. However, I just wanted to kind of take a moment to recognize that obviously employer brand is kind of built up from all of these little different touch points. Every interaction that you're having is giving someone a perception. So whether it's a really intuitive application process on a website, whether you've got loads of stuff on your social media to help people feel what it's like to be working at your business, everyone is kind of a company's way of letting you know what they can expect, how you care about your business, how you care about your people within your business, and also your future employees. So people can get a feel for what it's like to work with you, what it's like to work for you. And yeah, it's really, really, really important. And I'm going to give a little insight into why. So I have stolen one statistic. I won't ruin any of Leanne's bits for later on. So did you know 86% of workers state they wouldn't apply or work for a business with a poor reputation? I think that's really high, but equally, I would argue that it's going to get even higher. So there's loads and loads of research that evidences the millennials starting it off, Gen Z, and then obviously we just think about the children they're going to be bringing up as well. We're becoming more and more purpose-driven. And obviously as a marketing agency, specializing in purpose-driven clients, obviously we really do see it firsthand. However, I think it's going to be increasingly important that we're seeing, like, particularly Gen Z, they want their cake and to eat it. Yes, they want to have all the benefits, but they're also wanting to have like some sense of fulfillment as well. So we're going to talk about how to balance that as well with kind of business needs later on. So yeah, really, really important and something that you can't ignore. So what's it made of? We've obviously got things you can control, like job descriptions, employee comms. We've got your values, so what the business is based on, your social media, website and blogs, all the bits that you're putting out there. These are kind of things you can control, things you can produce. We've got things you can directly influence. So this is kind of built up from your stories, the advocacy, your brand ambassadors. This is if you think about how your employees may speak about you. So me speaking on this webinar about MP&Co, hopefully Mike, who is the agency owner, has presented, he's given me great values, great communications, great training, great support to be able to have me being able to present him in a way that he feels is a good representation of the employee brand. And also company reviews, that's a really great way to kind of see how people are performing. And then we've also got the aspects that you can indirectly influence. So obviously awards, I know that's a bit of a dodgy topic. I know that we say whether they actually go to the right people or not. However, awards in general, and if we think about perception, and I think when I think about employee brand as a whole, it's perception. So a little case study, essentially. Tyler Grange, you may not have heard of, unless you've been on one of our other webinars and heard us talking about them. So Tyler Grange are an environmental planning agency. They joined us. We have been working with them for, goodness, probably about 5 years or so. When they first came to us, very, very typical blue. You wouldn't recognise them from kind of a lineup of accountancy firms or finance or anything, the usual very blue, stale kind of branding. However, that's not what the company was like at all. And I think there was a real big disconnect between what they were putting out there versus who they were. So we worked really hard with Tyler Grange. They've got an Instagram page, which is purposely for those who are considering joining them. It's not outwardly saying that because they wouldn't kind of want to be that exclusive, but it is to kind of give a feel of what it's like behind the doors. They've got loads of bits behind the scenes. They have like a nice welcome to the tribe, how they talk about their team. They're always saying that they're a tribe because they do take a real nice approach. So they've got a really active employer brand strategy, which includes obviously like the Instagram, the welcome packs. They've got partner networks. They have gatherings in castles. It's all very fun. But they also invest in personal brands. So that's why I wanted to feature lovely Julian up here. So I think whilst it's important to recognise that you have the employee brand, the employer's brand, you also have other people within it that represent you, like I touched on before. So for example, Julian, he's a director. However, he's a real specialist within his industry as well. And it's really important to recognise that, because by boosting his employee brand, and by boosting his brand, his own personal brand, they're able to kind of align themselves with the industry experts and position themselves as experts, as leaders, by associating with Julian. So it's a clever way of, they can have a personality as a company, but they can also kind of leverage other aspects as well and lean on other aspects, which is great. So I'm just going to, I will be sharing a little bit more about them in the follow-up, but for the kind of point of time today, I am going to move on to why you should bother with employee brand. So 96% of companies recognise that employer brand and reputation impacts revenue. We all want more, don't we? Let's be honest. Whether it means that we're going to do something great with it, whether it means you're going to take someone on holiday, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we are striving for growth, usually as businesses, even purpose-driven businesses. We've got a great report that shows that you don't have to shy away from profit. You don't have to shy away from growth. And the point is that, hey, you may be able to reach more people and impact more people in a positive way. Companies investing in their employer brand also have a 28% lower attrition rate, which is just huge. I'm going to not touch too much on these just because Leanne's got some exceptional slides later on that I don't want to ruin. 76% of candidates research a company before joining. That's 52% increase compared to 2022. So a big jump in a year of people who are actively trying to figure out what's it like to actually join a company. What's it going to feel like when I'm actually there? And also a strong employer brand will halve your cost per hire through more referrals and direct hires, which is just massive. So in order to get hold of those benefits, you're going to have to listen to us for the rest of the slides. Second poll, a little bit of interaction for you now, if I can find out how to run it. That's okay. Why don't we just do a little show of hands, because it is not operating and I Don't want to spend forever waiting for it. So if you want to take yourself off mute, who currently owns your employer brand?
I would say it's a team effort for us guys. We all share our social media efforts at MP&Co, but it's probably quite marketing agency. Yeah, that's just something that we do rather than, we're all marketers, so we all take responsibility.
Cool. Sam, what about you?
Well, most things in a sort of a one-man band fall to me. So yes, I was the person saying I didn't have an employer brand, but I don't intend to employ anybody else. But people will still have a perception of what it might be like to work with me.
Absolutely, absolutely, completely agree. Ian, what about you?
Yeah, it's really me and the team, because we don't have, obviously we work with yourselves on marketing. We've got sort of outsourced HR support. So I'd say it's primarily me, but the team are getting more involved in it now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it largely still just you that's obviously going out to represent Fighter?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we are sort of changing that a bit now, but it's mainly been down to me, really.
Yeah. Great. What about you, Claire?
I'd say in terms of our employer brand project, it's very much marketing and HR working together, but as a business, loads of our solicitors are very, very active on social media and help to build that employer brand for us as well.
Excellent. Great. So a nice span really across the board, I think. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Leanne's going to be using that a little bit later on to help kind of guide some of her pointers. But before then, we want you to have a little bit of a thought about your audience. So Sam, just kind of featuring on what you were saying before, actually, that it's just you and you don't want to employ anyone else. I completely understand that. However, I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on who actually cares about your employer brand, because yes, we've got employees. However, your customers, obviously, I appreciate that it is just you treating yourself. However, if you were to change your mind, or I don't know whether you have an exit strategy at all, but obviously investors, your competition care as well, what it's like for you to, what your employer brand is, what people's perception of you is, even if you're not employing anyone. Obviously, if people have got a negative perception, that's not going to help you at all for anything. For the larger businesses, however, obviously we have other stakeholders that will get involved. We've got the media, obviously unions love to jump on treatment cases, and I think that that's really important as well. That can massively kind of negate all of your efforts if you have a horrible scandal off the back of something. Obviously candidates, which we're going to feature and touch on quite a lot later. But the one I kind of wanted to highlight is, as obviously purpose-driven businesses that we work with, we're recognizing a lot more people, we're working with a lot more people that are becoming B Corps and starting that purpose-driven journey. So if you do become a B Corp, essentially it's like a standard accreditation that your like CSR policies are in a great place, and the ops and running of your business works really well. We've got another webinar coming up on that in a few weeks if you are interested in getting started with that. But as part of the process, actually, you need to really look into your upstream and downstream emissions, and part of that is having a real look into your supply chain and what it actually includes, as well as those which are really big businesses that have all their policies and procedures in place of who they will work with and what you need to have in place. Actually, even the smaller businesses which are going for accreditations in a similar way, they need a certain level of standard for you to be able to treat your employees, for them to be able to even work with you. So whilst it may not be as impactful for you from the media perspective, you might not have to worry about that. Even as a small business, if you want to be going after those contracts, you still need to have those great benefits and the perception that you are in a really good way for other people to even come near you and touch you. So it's a bit like perception by association, I guess. So taken from a little bit of a Steve Jobs quote, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he basically says you need to get so close to your audience that you need to know what they need before they even realize it, so you can service it to them. And the idea is that you need to really understand your customer as much as possible, because only at that point can you support them and service them. And the reason I am talking about customer here and slightly tweaking that quote is because it's really important that when we're referencing employer brand, obviously we've got all of those different stakeholders. So for example, what does your supply chain care about your employer brand, and considering that. So whilst we don't have time to do it today, I did want to kind of include, I don't know if anyone's aware of HubSpot. They have a wonderful kind of customer persona builder. Basically, it sets you through 7 tasks that basically makes you gather a load of information, and you put it in there, and it gives you a real good customer persona kind of picture of who your customer is. So you could have one for each of those audience groups, and then when you're considering your employer brand and what you can do and what you should be putting out there into the world to influence them, obviously you can have the customer in mind, because we really need to be tailoring it towards them. Little note on data. So obviously I really recommend that you use your data, but for those who haven't been gathering it to date, obviously there's lots of external data out there that you can use. You can also use your gut and perception of what happens when you're out there. And I also recommend using it as an opportunity to get in touch and ask people, what do they care? How much do they care about how you're treating your employees, for example? What's their level of good? Because it does very much depend out there, and we do appreciate that whilst obviously it'd be great to do everything in the world, there has to be a start point, and also there has to be a balance with what you can do at any one point. So we're going to talk and touch a bit more on that later on. However, before then, you have a little task. So if everyone can get their pen and paper or notes app, I don't really mind however you do it. We wanted to set you a quick task, which is think, feel, do. So we want you to think of one of your audiences, and this can be your current employees, it could be candidates, and I think they're probably the 2 easiest ones. Sam, for yourself, I would probably think of maybe suppliers, because I think that would be maybe one of the most pressing ones for you, about how the treatment and how the perception of your business is. So what we want to do is for you to note a couple of bits down about what you want your customers, or please use customers interchangeably with the audience that you want, what we want them to think. So do we want them to think, oh, hey, MP&Co, that lady Daniela is hopefully really approachable, a little bit nuts, but very approachable. We might want them to feel like they're reassured and they could talk to me about anything, and that they could come to me and hopefully feel like I would be open ears, a nice manager. We've got all my team maybe pulling faces, we'll see. And then what do we want them to do? So I might want them to ring me, I might want them to send me an email. So we're breaking it down, and what we want them to think, what we want them to feel, and what we want them to do. So if you can take one audience, one of your stakeholders, and we just want you to detail what you want them to think, feel, do. And I'm not going to give you a whole 5 minutes, because my music's not working and it's a very long time to sit in silence, especially when I always feel the need to fill silence with horrible anecdotes and all of that. So we'll say it's 2 minutes max. Think, feel, do. I'm just going to skip back as a reminder to the different audiences, just in case you're wondering who to choose. Lucy's also kindly put the B Corp webinar link in the chat as well, if you do want to have a nosy at that. It's about how to get started on your purpose-driven journey, whether you're right at the start or a little bit further down the road. The reason that we're asking these questions is, when I mentioned before that we can use it as an opportunity to go out and talk with people, to check our data, to have interactions, and also when we're designing our marketing strategy, we can use these as kind of the KPIs and a level of kind of what success looks like. So when we're talking to someone and saying like, oh, what do you think about this? If we're echoing some of the same words back at us, we're probably going to feel really on brand at that point. If someone's actually echoing the opposite and they're saying, hey, actually, I thought you knew nothing about the topic. I thought that you were really standoffish, and I really struggled to feel like I could get comfortable with you. Hey, it's going to have warning signals all over to me, because actually that's the opposite of what I'm trying to put out there. So then the perception is not matching. And we're going to talk later about how and where that's probably coming from. Okay. Hopefully everyone had something noted down for that, but if not, I'm just going to skip through and you can obviously continue writing down. I won't take offense if I see you scribbling away. If you are doing doodles, I would like to see them though. So when we're looking at content, obviously throughout, marketing is always about, I like the best definition of marketing to be knowing your customer and knowing how to talk to your customer. For me, that is kind of what it's all about. I spent 4 years studying a degree and I couldn't find a definition I like. So that's my version. I think that everything kind of comes and boils down to that. So if we apply that to obviously employer branding and how we're trying to get across to people that consider how we are as an employer, we need to have some content out there as well to try and support and connect. So when we're obviously trying to get in front of potential candidates and they might be having a look at us, what do they want to know? On the next slide, we're going to do a little bit of content ideation around that. However, kind of a place to get started if you are really struggling is there are some really consistent topics of interest. So you can have a little think about what do prospective clients want to know, what keeps clients up at night, and what you're talking about internally. These are really great things to start thinking about sharing, because these are things that people are interested in as well. We've also got the emerging trends kind of side of it, where what are the emerging tech and topic trends that are out there that people may be interested in? Are there any new ways of working that you're applying that people would be interested in? And also the wider impact, societal impact, environmental impact. A lot of people talk about when they're putting benefits packages together, perhaps featuring volunteering days and bits like that, so people can really align their values on that perspective as well. So any insight into what it's like behind the curtain does really help. And yeah, however, sorry,
just roll back to that last slide and the bit on the left hand side.
Of course you can.
Just maybe I missed it.
Yeah.
How does that sort of apply from an employer branding perspective? What do prospective clients want to know and what keeps them up at night?
Yeah, so obviously when someone's joining, so if I think about if I'm trying to hire a new account manager, for example, for our business, I want someone who actually understands our customer, and that's something that's really important for me. Because they need to know our clients, and it's about everyone being on the same page, everyone having the same perception of us. So I think I've probably phrased that a little bit confusingly, I do appreciate. But if we think back to that audience slide before, it's all about what do people want to know about how we operate. And for example, our clients, thinking back to Tyler Grange, for us, Tyler Grange really care about how we treat our employees, our employees, sorry. So if we don't treat them well, they can't work with us. So they're a B Corp. So all of their suppliers have to hit a certain standard. So from that perspective, it's what do they need to know? What do they want to know to feel like they are comfortable to work with us? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. Fabulous. So one little exercise from me. And then I'll be passing over to Dave. So before I pass over to Dave, kind of to start bringing together some ideas about how you can bring it to life, because yes, you want to put some content out there in the world, but actually, where do you start? This is a really great place to start, and we use this content ideation within the agency quite a lot. So what I'm going to say is, let's think back to that audience again that you had first for the first task. And I want you to think about 3 questions that they ask you. And if you can jot down 3 questions that they ask you, I also want you to jot down 2 things that they need to know. So for example, for Tyler Grange, they need to know we hit certain standards for, I don't know, the bare minimum for pay, for example, that we're a good, we pay people the right amount. They might also need diversity policies, etc. And also one thing we need to share, that we want to share, sorry, that we want people to know. So 3 questions you're asked, 2 things that they need to know, and 1 thing we want to share. Leanne, you're more than welcome to sing at this point. If you find it really easy and you've done that original audience, I recommend thinking about another audience. So if you've already thought about your employees, think about potential prospective employees. What are they asking during their onboarding process? What are they asking when they're considering applying? What do they need to know to be able to join you? And what do we want them to be aware of before they do? I'm going to leave you scribbling away for a second, just because we're going to change screens. Dave is now going to be presenting. So Dave, feel free to take the horns. And we'll leave people writing down those, because I recommend that's a really excellent place to start with your content. So that content that is driven from what people need to hear. It's driven from the points of where they're stuck on the journey as well. And also it's driven from the key messages that we want to get across. So if you're wondering where to start with content, that's an excellent place to do it. And I recommend rerunning that activity regularly and considering putting in different audiences so that you can come up with some content that actually is driven from a place of need. So over to Dave. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm going to focus on brand reasonably broadly, and then bring it specifically to employer branding. But a lot of this is how do you bring it all to life through your overall brand from every single touch point that goes out there from the organisation, and also what happens internally. So just an open question to everyone. Does anyone want to have a stab at what a brand actually is in a short sentence?
You might have to pick on someone, Dave.
Our personal view is that for most of the people that we engage with or talk to, the word brand is massively misunderstood. And unfortunately, it's become associated with logos and colours. I think if I stop most people in the street, that's probably what they'd guess that a brand actually is. So the first slide we would put up in any presentation basically says a brand is not your logo, it's everything that you do. And that's what a brand is. It's a whole business from top to bottom. Every decision it ever makes is a brand. And what makes a brand is a number of things that I'll go through, but it's ultimately being true to yourself and keeping a promise that you've pre-agreed, which is where a lot of people don't get it right because they don't have any kind of thing to steer them in the first place. So we would break it down as simply as this really for people. So we talk about the things that people see and then the things that people feel. So as I said before, a lot of people would think a brand is the name and the logo, maybe some colours. So on the left-hand side, these are the things that make up a visual identity or brand identity. So obviously a name and a logo, type, graphics, color, imagery, or illustration, or a mixture of the two, tone of voice, movement and sound as well. We're in a world now where every company on the planet can move and make a sound, whereas years ago you basically have to be big enough to put a TV ad out there. That isn't for those elite companies anymore. Everyone can create social content. You can create videos on any platform. So every company as a minimum has the ability to make their logo move and sound and make a sound. So we are quite big on that because it's important to determine how fast or slow your organization moves from a graphical perspective. JCB should move quite different to Google, and it gives a sense of how those organizations then operate. So the visual identity is a big part of this. But if you think about the comms that you put out all the time, so whether it's comms around marketing because you're trying to push your product or your service and try and win new customers, at some point you are still putting that in front of people, and any of those people could be someone that ends up working at your organization. So just by putting out your brand in any environment, you are actually representing yourself to anyone that might want to work for that company. And sometimes you've got to know the company exists in the first place to have a desire to want to work for them. So the visual side of things is obviously really important. And you can only deliver those component parts if you actually know what you stand for and where you want to be positioned against your direct competition. So the bigger part for me for a brand is actually the strategy that would go behind it. So this is the bit that gives off the feeling both to people that work within the company and then obviously your target audiences that we touched upon before. So part of a brand strategy, this is not everything, but it's a list of a few things. For us, every company should have a defined purpose as to why it exists on the planet. And that has to be greater than making a profit or pleasing shareholders. Those days have gone. You need to have a real reason as to why people even get out of bed in the morning and go to work. And you can drive a lot of innovation and creativity if you've defined that really well. The purpose doesn't also mean that it's just about sustainability or carbon neutral, which a lot of people think that's what the purpose is, that they've got to try and be good in that particular area. For me, that isn't what it's ultimately about. And in another 10 years, that should be just something that every company does anyway. So that should just be a standard. So it's not really a purpose. Values obviously shape all behaviors within the organization, but it shapes every decision that the company makes in our view. So if you go back to the bit where people see, when we're developing a brand, we're basically saying the values will shape what typefaces we pick, what graphics we pick, what colors we pick, imagery and illustration, tone of voice, the pace and the movement and the sound are all driven by the values within the organization. And for me, values were created basically because a founder set up a company because they believed they could do it in a certain way. And a lot of those will come from their own personal values without them realizing it. Then they employ the first person and get frustrated by the first person because they don't do it the way that they do it. It's because they're just not matching the person's values. So you go through that cycle for a little while, then realize actually if you write down the values as part of the organization, what you believe in, then when you actually recruit people, you can say, these are the values that we have as an organization, this is our purpose. You can go through a recruitment process of making sure that they match some of those, not just the skill that you need, but they actually have similar values to what you want as an organization. And then in any situation moving forward where something doesn't quite work out, you can have a grown-up conversation around the fact that our values are this, so next time if you do that, can you just try and do it a little bit more like this because this is what we stand for? It then doesn't become a personal opinion of an owner or founder. It just becomes, this is the conversation we're having because this is what we stand for as an organization. So everything within feeling, like levels of service, the benefits that you give either employees or benefits to a customer, anything that makes you different, the overall personality, all of that can be determined by putting a proper strategy together. And then that strategy will influence everything that then goes out of those four walls, and that's what people end up seeing. So decision making, as I've just gone through, all stems from a brand strategy. Every decision that's ever made within an organisation, if you're developing a proper brand, will come from the strategy that you've put in place behind it. So this is just a really small example, but these are just lead titles from 2 different organisations about trying to attract talent to come to the organisation. And they're both saying similar things, but tonally they're very, very, very different. And they're attracting different people, or they're putting some people off. So empowering dream makers, just the language itself might actually put people off. And you go, well, that's a good thing, because that's what a brand should do, full stop anyway, whether that's the customers it wants or whether it's people that you want to work for it. You actually want to attract the right people. That's the right customers or the right employees in the first place. So there's an efficiency in the recruitment process. So even coming down to the tonal aspect of something, that'll instantly make a big difference as to whether it's kind of the company that would appeal to you or not. And that's just one, what is it, 3 words on one and 4 words on the other. But very different approaches to what they're trying to say. And then we took an example of Monzo, you know, a great brand for us, just launched their new TV advert, which I think is, what we think as an agency is outstanding compared to what I see on TV most days. But they put, internally we encourage an open, collaborative, inclusive working environment built for the way you live today. So they have that statement out there. And so then they've got to look at those statements, you know, which could be part of a vision, mission. I'm not sure exactly where they place that. But if you look on the right-hand side, part of their recruitment process, if you apply for a job at Monzo, which we went through for this very exercise, some of the questions they'll ask is, if you'd like to please share your preferred pronouns. They've got them specifically in place as a question, whereas a lot of people still overlook that in a recruitment process. It says, or if you'd like to please spell out your name and let us know how it's pronounced. That means when they actually talk to someone at any point in the recruitment process, they can say the name properly and not have that awkward situation going, oh, you've got a funny name, I don't know how to pronounce that. You shouldn't have those, you shouldn't need to have those discussions. And if you look at the 2 things on the right, they're picking up on the things on the left, that we encourage an open, collaborative, inclusive working environment. So if they're going to put a statement out like that, they've got to look at every single line item and detail that they go through when they're recruiting in the processes. And Monzo are picking, there's 2 that are in their recruitment process that they have picked out. I think a lot of companies would overlook those 2 particular examples. And then this is just a quick visual of a post we put out recently. We got 3 roles: a developer, an art worker, and a designer. And we obviously are a creative agency. We push motion and animation a lot because we believe all brands are capable of doing it and can make a big difference to standing out in a crowd. But we also have values of being simple and bold. So the whole ad is built around ultimately what we stand for, and quite clear of the 3 roles that we wanted. But it was just an initial social post to grab attention. And just off that one post, and I'll go into it in detail, we probably got about 80, 90 CVs that came in just off one post on LinkedIn anyway. But the approach to the ad needs to match what we stand for as a brand, because it gives a suggestion of the fact that this could be a bit of a dynamic, creative, modern organization rather than some drab JPEG post that goes out for a job role. And then this moves us on to a story I made up years ago, and I often tell to people, is that's an ad that's just gone out. Say it was our ad that's just gone out, or someone else's ad that's gone out. Any messaging that you're putting out is obviously coming from somewhere, and that's the things that people see and start to feel. And so if a company specifically had said in their values that they want to be highly friendly and approachable, it was really important to them because we're a people's person kind of company, then friendly and approachable becomes one of their values. You can do a lot with that, with the tone of voice or the typefaces or the colours you pick and things like that. So you're giving a sense that you're a friendly, approachable organisation, and you've just seen an ad go out for a job. So you're thinking, oh, great, everything they've said so far seems to, they feel friendly and approachable, maybe their socials are quite good. So you get to the point where you're fortunate enough to go to the organisation for an interview, and you arrive at reception, Now, you'd like to think that most companies would be capable of putting a friendly person on reception because that's the first person you see. But I go into a hell of a lot of companies and can say that is completely wrong. You get some really grumpy people on reception, which are not a great representation of your company from the start. But let's assume most people are capable of putting someone decent on reception. There are times where they will be on holiday or they turn in sick, and so someone's got to man reception quite quickly. And you might not get the same caliber, clearly, because you're just making a quick decision. So if you had a value of friendly and approachable, you would be saying to yourself, right, a minimum then, we'll ask 3 questions. So it doesn't matter who's on the desk, at least we know 3 questions will always get asked. And some people might be more chatty or not, but at least 3 things get asked. And you might just ask simple questions like, where do you come from today? What was the journey like? And what drink do you want? Those 3 questions just be asked. And you could implement that tomorrow because the pushes one of your values a little bit further forward. And then you could go, well, that was nice, but what if we captured the answers of what people said? So I came from Manchester, it was raining, I'll have a black coffee. I could capture those answers just in a Google Sheet for now, no software needed, just put it in a Google Sheet. And then when the person comes back in 3-4 months later, I could have a trigger that reminds me of the answers. So then I could actually say, hey, did you come from Manchester again today? At least it's not raining like last time. Do you want a black coffee again? And they will feel that this is a friendly, approachable organisation because I've done a little bit of magic by just capturing some information. Something that could be done within minutes and applied to any organisation. Now, if you're going on a recruitment journey and you've seen all the content being friendly and approachable, there's clearly an expectation that would happen as you arrive for the interview. And it's little things like that, that if you're using your values well and implementing them daily in all the different things that you do, you can then put some measures in place in any given environment. And so these are made up, these are just things that we put together to try and get a point across. But if you looked at a brand like Bupa, surrounded by health, you might think they could offer gym memberships to all of their staff or give them a discounted rate or something like that. It would be an appropriate match. Mind, mental health, they might have access to therapy and doctor's appointments and things like that. I'm sure they do, but we're just making these up to get a point where you can align things that are more appropriate. Ben and Jerry's social and economic justice, looking at minority roles in the recruitment. Strava based on fitness might decide they have extended lunches every day or a particular day because that allows people the freedom to go for a run or a walk or something like that. NatWest financial security, could they actually work with some of their team to offer 0% interest loans or something else that helps them to get further on in life and realize that that's part of what NatWest offers anyway. But it's getting an alignment between what it is that you do and then the things that you could potentially offer and attract. So Strava, as an example, actually supports safer streets. And I love the fact that that's what they've gone for because it's completely aligned to what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to get more people to use their app, maybe the paid version if you really get into fitness. But they also then saying, but part of what we want everyone to do is have safer streets. So women feel safer running at night. Better street lighting with councils, maybe potholes could be sorted with councils. Can we keep parks open locally and look after and maintain them? Could our staff go out on volunteer days and look after some of those parks locally? All of that pushes towards what Strava is ultimately about. So I love the fact that they've really carved out something to stand for rather than just saying we plant a tree or we give money to cancer research, which are 2 great things still. I'm not saying you don't do it, but my point is it's thinking through what are we as a brand and then how do we actually align the things that we're doing and the good that we do in the world. So this is just a really basic example of our approach to something, and Leanne will touch on this more, but you do some form of activity, whatever it is, you should drive it through by looking at your values. That's kind of, for me, the key. And then you can assess whether what you've put in place is good. It should be better because you've done it based on your values, and then you can keep assessing it and improving it, and you can look at another activity and do the same thing again. So as an example, these are our 4 values across the top. So simple, bold, true, and customer focused. Now, if someone's applying for a job, the whole process is simple. especially a designer role. They're basically sending the portfolio to review, and that will include some work. Our bold aspect is we can close a portfolio down within a second based on bad design. And that might seem harsh, but there's no point in going any further. If they can't design, they can't work for our organization. It's just not going to happen. So we instantly will reject, as a filter process, instantly reject portfolios that aren't designed well enough, because we have a standard to keep. The other part of that, though, is we reply to absolutely everybody that applies for a role. And we will email everyone back to say that they didn't get through to the next phase. If they then get to the next phase and they come in for a face-to-face interview, that's already a smaller pool of people. And then we'll phone back every single one of them to say why they didn't actually make it in the end, because we're being true to what we stand for, and we're in the communications world, so we don't like to leave people in the lurch. And if they're in the interview showing their work, we expect their work and the way that they talk about it to be customer focused. And so our customer focused value is obviously we'll focus on our customers, but our job is to actually focus on our customers' customers. That's the only thing we're really interested in. Is the brand we're creating for somebody attracting the customers that they want to attract? So if someone's portfolio work isn't based on their customer's customer, then it's not really what we're looking for. We don't want just nice, pretty work. We want it to actually deliver. So we've shaped it around our 4 values. And I guess the point is that any activity that you're doing in the world, if you can base it around purpose and values, you're going to get a tighter control on your perception to people in the world. And then you'll attract the right people in, whether that's in customers or employees or candidates, whatever it might be. It's a tighter control over all of it. So the final thing, obviously you went through audiences before, but a slightly different take on this is any audience could be a future employee, clearly. So you could be dealing with a supplier who likes your organization more than the one they're in, and they could actually work for you in the future. You could have a client that actually switches from one place to the other. It just happened with me the other day. We're trying to talk to someone about a new website, and then I found out that they'd moved to one of the clients. So any audience is looking at your brand at some point in time, and any of them could be your next employee. And that's why it's important to try and represent and present yourself as well as you possibly can in all areas. And then final story, before we pass on. Again, it's a made-up story from me, but there was a time where I saw a TV advert with British Telecom, and then the Be There strapline. And it's obviously taking the B and the T from British Telecom, so there's nothing clever in that part of it. But I looked at it and definitely overthought it. But I was thinking, okay, great. So Be There, that's good. That would mean then that when I go networking and sometimes see a local BT representative, they're saying they're going to be there. So they're going to try and be a big corporate, but actually get into small businesses and have a network in Manchester or Stockport. So their local BT representative is going to be there for smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses. I thought, okay, great. And then I thought, well, the products need to be there. There's an expectation that if I turn the TV on, the broadband is working, the apps work straight away. Everything they produce has got to be there instant. Otherwise, my kids would get really annoyed if they couldn't get on something really quickly. Then you take it further and go, well, maybe it means be there internally as well. So maybe when you join the company, you get a buddy or a friend that looks after you and nurtures you, a mentor. Maybe each team can be there for each other rather than departments fighting with each other. Maybe HR can put some things in place where you can actually go and see therapists or things like that for mental health. So everything about it becomes this huge thing, and the strapline is just the Be There bit. So I got personally really excited thinking, wow, BT are going to change and really drive this through the whole organization. Anyway, 3 months later, they changed the strapline. So clearly it wasn't quite as big as I believed it could have been. But as a thought, a strapline could be the leading edge to all of those things that I've just mentioned, which would make a really strong employer brand. But BT just didn't deliver on those 2 words, which I thought was a crying shame. And that's it from me. So thanks for listening. I'll pass you on and stop sharing.
Excellent. I've just noticed Ian's put a lovely joke for us in the chat if anyone wants to have a nosy at that. Thanks so much, Dave. That's really interesting, and hopefully it's brought to life the need for consistency for a brand and to maintain obviously a strong employer brand, and how it kind of comes to life at each touch point. So how does this kind of meet recruitment? We're going to pass over to Leanne to bring it to life for you. So over to you, Leanne.
Well, thank you very much. So we've spoken a lot this morning, obviously, about employer brand, how to bring that to life from a sort of creation perspective, and I'm hopefully going to give you a bit of content into why that's actually important. If you've already signed up for this, the chances are actually that you're quite well bought into it as a concept. But what I quite often find is there's always at least somebody in your organization who would challenge you every step of the way, and who doesn't believe that it's something worth investing in. So hopefully I'm going to give you some of the data to take away to support the fact that this is actually quite a crucial part of your talent attraction strategy. So just move on to the next slide for me, please, Danny. Very top line, saves you money, which for all that I know everybody is a pretty purpose-driven business here. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for. And it's not just it saves you money, it can actually make you more money in the long term. When people are talking about employer brand, using it as a talent attraction tool, you quite often hear things like it attracts the best people, the top people, but we've heard it mentioned already this morning, what it actually does is attracts the right people to your business, whoever that is. Everybody at the moment is crying out for talent. There's been a shortage for a very long time. Seems a bit at odds when you hear headlines like there's 1 million people currently of working age in the UK that are unemployed. That's actually because of a skills shortage, which is a whole other thing that I'm not going to get into right now. But what it does mean for everybody on this call is there's a shortage of skills that you need. And so that's increasing competition across the board. Now, there were comparisons earlier on in the session, sort of aligning, showing how employer brand and traditional marketing do actually really overlap. And where I see that the most is actually that, much like marketing, it does tend to be an area that people cut back on when they need to tighten up their belts. And everybody knows business is more and more expensive than it ever has been. So lots of people are looking to save money where they can, and it does seem to be an area that people are neglecting. But it's a really counterintuitive approach. If you just skip on to the next slide for me. So if you get the wrong employee, it actually costs you quite a lot of money. 22% of people leave a business within the first 45 days. Now, the most common reasons for that is that the role or the company hasn't lined up with their expectations. I'll come on to it in a little bit more detail later. But what we see quite often when leaders are setting a budget for hiring, they're focusing just on recruitment costs. So, the recruiter fee, price for job ad. Danny highlighted some fantastic ways that other brands are using it on social media and so on. Loads of different ways of doing it, but that's actually just a fraction of the cost of your hiring. So I've run some numbers, and I've actually based it on the UK's average salary for the purposes of today, which is just under 35k. So I've rounded it up just to make the numbers a bit simpler. You may very well be recruiting higher salaries than this, but I'm just going to work on 35k as an average. So kicking off, first of all, with the elephant in the room, the recruitment fees. You might choose not to use a recruiter. That's fine. If you do, roughly speaking, you're going to expect to pay between 20 and 30% of the base salary. So in this situation, that's about 9k straight off. Then you've got to look at your payroll costs. So, taxes, benefits, your things like national insurance, pension contributions. I've calculated this on the mandatory, the minimum. Yours might be higher. Lots of people do offer a higher pension contribution than that. But in this example, it's coming out at £8,500, which gets us up to already £52,500 as a straight up cost. I've then put a rough number based on some research I've done for training. So £1,500 in there for that. That could be somebody paid to deliver it externally. That could be the monetary value of the person or people internally that are giving up their time to bring that employee up to speed. But that's around the average cost for each new employee for businesses in the UK. And apparently, again, average cost, we're spending £4,800 on things like tech and office setup per employee. So it actually gets us to £58,800 if we're being really specific. Nearly double the starting salary. But I kick this off by saying that 22% of people actually leave in the first day. So imagine then having to pay that out again when you've got to rehire this role. If you just skip on to the next slide for me, I've just updated these numbers. I've assumed in this case that they've lasted that 45 days in these statistic examples. So we're looking at adding around 12.5% of that figure as a repeat cost. I've assumed that we're going to reuse the same tech. I know I certainly would in that situation. So I've not used that as an additional cost, but I have accounted for some additional recruitment fees. Unless you've worked with a partner that will guarantee you a refill, you're probably looking at re-advertising and the paid socials all over again. So around about £16,500. This is really roughly speaking, it's a very general example, and there are a lot of variations that are hard to account for. But I'm hoping it gives you something of an idea of actually how much it costs, what your upfront investment is just to bring somebody on board. The thing is that this isn't actually where those financial implications stop. These are quite easy to calculate, these onboarding costs, but there's an element that's actually really hard to calculate and put a number on, and that's the impact on your wider business of having some poor retention. So if you do have those employees that are leaving in a short time frame. If you just jump along to the next one, a high attrition rate, as it's referred to in the industry, kills your long-term strategy and your short-term execution. And this is across your business. I'm not just talking talent at this point. And I'm just going to go into explaining what I mean by that phrase. So when you've brought somebody on board and they're not really working, you're going to go through a period where you invest time in trying to make that mishire, as I'm going to refer to them, work in your business. You're going to put in countless hours of management time, whether that's additional training, more frequent appraisals, there might be shadowing people. You could actually even be fighting fires with clients. You may have disgruntled colleagues. Now, putting a number on management time is actually quite easy as well. Bit of time tracking software, your average managerial salaries, you're sorted. But whilst you probably have access to that technology for billing your clients and so on, it's actually your clients that are quite heavily impacted by this high attrition rate. Now, I'm going to just jump back to some numbers and use a sales director as an example. So I think a lot of people attending, or can you just jump forward one more again? I think we've ended up with a duplicate slide, so apologies. Yep, that's the one. Fab. A lot of people will have a similar role, albeit potentially on a smaller scale. But I've gone for a 200k OTE, which is quite realistic for a sales director role in the Northwest, about 100k base plus the bonuses on top. So as you can see, you're looking at a very significant financial commitment here for this type of role. Imagine that you've given that sales director a target of 2 million and brought on new revenue in their first year. So even though it's cost you over £250,000 to get them on board, if they fail, you've actually got massive lost opportunity costs of at least double that. And I'm actually being quite generous with that by saying double, because the average tenure of a sales director in the Northwest is just over 3 years. So it could even be triple. But I just want to take you on a little worst case scenario journey here. So in the meantime, this toxic person, okay, it's infiltrating through your culture, it's spreading, and now people are leaving because this person is creating the negative culture in your business. That high turnover of employees is now causing financial leaks everywhere. So not only have you got to now replace the 2 million hole in your sales forecast, but because of an endless recycling of your staff, you're losing clients out of the other end of your sales funnel because of inconsistent relationships. Now you can't invest in growth. You're having to panic hire because you're trying to fulfill your current assignments, and you're trying to cling on to your existing customers. So that growth budget that you had is now actually going on fixing bad attrition. But by that point, you're hiring anyone who'll take the job because you just need to get bums on seats. It's a real concertina effect throughout your whole business. Once you're on that kind of downward spiral, it can take years and years to repair. So you might as well just throw that people plan out of the window, to be honest. Attracting talent becomes so much harder in this situation because you've now got a terrible reputation. You're a bad employer. So you've not got anybody applying for your adverts. You can't use headhunters like us. We can't sell the opportunity in. People are checking Glassdoor and seeing scathing reviews. And people do use platforms such as Glassdoor at various points through the process. So you might get lucky in this situation and somebody checks it before their CV submitted or before they do an application. But on so many occasions, we actually see people wait until the final interview stages before they go away and do that due diligence on the reputation of a company and then pull out at the last minute, by which point you've invested hours and hours of your time in an application that's going nowhere. But not everybody is a bad leaver, are they? I mean, in my head, certainly, and I'm sure everybody's the same, I've thought so often about the fact that everybody that leaves is going to be this perfect leaver. Okay, there's not going to cause any disruption. No one's going to, try and steal employees. They're not going to try and take clients. We're all going to stay friends after the amount of times I've said, we'll stay friends, let's meet up for coffee, and so on. The reality is that just never happens. I'm speaking from my own experience here. Like, you think people are going to be a great leaver, but there's always some element of negativity attached. So by preparing for a worst case scenario like what I've just run through there, you're going to be prepared for every situation long term. Now, I feel like that was a bit of a long-winded way of getting into why you should be investing in your employer brand. But in my opinion, the most powerful tool in your overall talent attraction arsenal is that employer brand. If you just skip forward a slide for us, please, Danny. So some of you might be thinking, it's not relevant to me. I don't have a high attrition rate, or even in Sam's case, you're not planning on hiring at all. That's absolutely fine. If you're not sure what a high attrition rate is, by the way, the UK average is about 15%. So if yours is lower than that, what I'd like you to just think about is how much bigger your opportunity is if you're not in that worst case scenario situation. So you're not losing your employees, so you haven't got that replacement cost. What you've got instead are the significant growth prospects that come with a great hire or a great external perception, in Sam's case, rather than a mediocre one. Okay, so say that sales director that I was talking about with a 2 million target, they're in a thriving environment that fulfills their needs. Okay, they're overperforming, so they're actually bringing on 2.5 million or more. Sure, you probably get where I'm going with that. Somebody's happy in their environment and the company that they're working for is a great fit for their own core beliefs and values. They're going to overperform and therefore make you more money. It's as simple as that. Now, what I would like you to take from my session, if there's absolutely nothing else, is a honest and authentic employer brand that is well embedded into your hiring process can have a huge impact on your growth. Okay, it can be an exponential impact. So if you just jump forward again for us, Danny, like Dave was saying before when he gave his own personal his company's process, is if you embed it in that way through that example, you're going to give yourself a much better chance of getting that hiring right first time. So there's absolutely no point in you hiding behind a sunshine, rainbows, happy brand if that's not what you are. Because you can sit and listen to everything that my colleagues have actually said this morning, but the reality is if it's not you. If you're a work hard, play hard type of sales environment, if you've got long hours in a cauldron of pressure, that type of employer brand, beanbags, pool tables, early finishes, it's only going to do you a disservice. People are just going to turn around and walk straight back out the door again. But for the purposes of this, let's say you've been through and you've actioned everything that we've talked about so far this morning. You've got that beautifully crafted and honest employer brand. So what are you going to do with it? Skip forward for me. So the first thing you're going to do is start with your shop window, as I like to call it. So things like your company website, a careers site if it's separate, your social media platforms. And obviously we've already covered quite a bit on all of those, but there's something that we haven't really touched on yet. And that is actually your job adverts. They get quite often neglected in this. So I'd like to share an example with you. This example here is actually one of mine. So I called this the anti-job advert. And if you, I don't know how well you can read it because it's quite small. I'll just read out that sort of first section there. We're not going to waste time describing the job. We're going to tell you why you should work for us. After all, you're already an accomplished recruitment professional. The most important bit, what's in it for you? And it goes on to list what they can expect to get from us as an employer. Part of the We Are Adam brand is that we do things differently. The problem that we come across is every other recruiter says that as well nowadays. So by flipping the job advert like this, we're setting the expectation that we want somebody with industry experience. We've given ourselves the opportunity to sell us as a genuinely different option for people in our industry. And it's worked really well. So far, this advert has brought in, I think, 4 of our most recent hires. So that's quite a big chunk of our workforce, really, for a small business. And all the feedback has actually been things like the job ad rang really true to me. I've been stuck in a corporate world that I've hated for years. I saw the advert and it really appealed. It was exactly the type of thing I was looking for. It's quite a subversive advert. If you can read it in full, that it's very sort of tongue-in-cheek. We're poking fun at the industry. It doesn't have to be quite so jarring if that doesn't suit your brand, but there's so much to be said for making sure that you're writing your job adverts in your brand voice. Unfortunately, it's not a be all and end all. You might attract a couple of unicorns, you might get really lucky and get 5 or 6 great hires off the back of it, but you certainly can't rely on it. Obviously, the speakers previously have touched on quite a few different ways you can use it. Use your employer brand quite creatively to draw people to you. But if you do get it right, you will start to draw people to you. I'm going to use a really big example here. To jump on to the next slide. Google, massive brand with a notoriously difficult culture. But people do still aspire to work there even now, because Google haven't shied away from who they are. Okay? They are a genuinely market-leading household name, and what they can actually offer, things like rapid personal, professional development in such a fast-moving industry, enough people are going to put up with the fact that there are, not many meaningful work relationships, apparently quite a juvenile culture, and there's a really high risk of redundancy. That's very evident. But they'll put up with that in return for the prestige of saying that they work for Google. It's just all about what matters for the employee. So just skip forward to the next slide for me, Danny. I really quickly wanted to touch on some of the statistics that we've got around flexible working, hybrid working. As you can see there, 46% of people do have some kind of flexible working arrangement. According to LinkedIn, job ads that mention remote or hybrid get 3 times the views of their office-based counterparts, but currently on the platform, only 2% of adverts actually say that. That increase in demand is probably due to the fact that businesses are bringing people back into the office, as opposed to there actually being an increase in remote or hybrid opportunities. So if it's something you can offer, if you can offer that kind of flexibility, it could be a great way for you to stand out. I've not got it in this slide here, but there is data actually recently from Stanford Uni that says that working from home 2 days a week reduces turnover by 35%. This was only released in the last week or so. But keeping that culture alive when you're agile working is really tricky. You've got to work twice as hard to embed culture. And So therefore maintain your employer brand when you've got that distributed workforce. 43% of the people that we surveyed left their last role due to poor culture. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the news recently. Some big businesses, like Man United and Boots, have recently announced they're bringing staff back on site. It's pretty safe to assume the reasons for that are actually the financial impact. And just stick with me for a second. They came immediately after year end. Now, I'm a massive advocate for hybrid working and an agile approach. So it feels a little bit off for me to say this, but because we've still got such a long way to go on figuring out how to make it work for everybody, rather than businesses investing in making it work, they're just defaulting and pulling people back into the office. A lot of people find that kind of data really interesting, so I just wanted to include it, but I'm really conscious of time. If you just flip on to the next one for me. You've got to weave this employer brand fully into your hiring process. Okay, so recruiting any role is a really substantial time commitment. On average, takes about 25 hours to recruit a role, and that's only accounting for one single person doing the interviewing. So if you have a panel of interviewers, it's even longer than that. By making sure your employer brand is woven into your hiring process, that time investment becomes a lot more worthwhile. One tool that, again, hasn't been touched on yet that I think is actually really overlooked is an impact statement. So I'd just like to jump forward again there. It's a bit of a time investment getting these right, but working from an impact statement instead of a job description can actually give you better value when you interview against it. So what I was going to get us to do, but conscious there's literally 5 minutes left of the session, so I'll just ask people to think about it as they go away and continue on with the rest of their week, is to take a role either that you're about to recruit, or you can do it for your own role if you're not hiring. And rather than listing details in your job description, as we have in grey here, have a look at how you can turn that into an impact statement. Make it revenue related if that's relevant to you. It can be around displaying certain behaviors. The point is, it goes beyond just a descriptive list and highlights the power and the impact that that employee can actually have in your business when it comes to influencing and achieving wider company goals. And as I think I just mentioned, you can actually interview against it as well. So if you hand this over to a hiring manager, if that's not yourself, and get them to assess suitability based on this impact statement rather than a job description, you're going to open up a much wider pool of candidates. I can absolutely guarantee, one, that you will have some of those essential skills on an advert or in a job description that aren't actually crucial to delivering in the role. Hard skills can always be taught, and attitude can't. But two, by interviewing against the impact someone's going to have, you're going to get a much better gauge on whether their skills and experience do actually align with your business needs. Whenever we've seen the very best, most successful placements that we've put in, it's where we've actually pushed back on what the hiring manager thought they wanted, guided them through this process, and put forward people who are going to align better with the organization's goals. Just helps you keep an open mind during the interview process, and you get a few wild cards usually thrown in. Quite often they're the ones who end up getting the job. I do have an example. We'll have to skip forward a few here, Danny, because I've sort of jumped over the activity for the purposes of time. I just want to jump forward to an example interview process, which is actually the one that we follow. I'm not going to run through it in detail. I'm sure you can all read the slide on the screen, but at any stage in this process, someone can veto a hire. Okay, so we get as many of our current team involved in the hiring process as possible. And as you can see, there's quite a few steps in it. It's definitely not going to work for every business. Recently, one of my colleagues told me that while she was going through this interview process, her best friend actually said, "Whoa, this is a big red flag. Like, there are too many interviews, too many stages. There's got to be something wrong with the business. Drop out." That was her best friend's advice. Drop out. Don't go there. This is a big red flag. She disagreed with them. Her opinion, and these are direct words, but her opinion was that she knew that this long process was showing that we actually aligned in our values. It was the work ethic of the team, the camaraderie, the fact we were introducing as many people as possible, showed the importance that we were placing on getting the right person first time. So she did, I'm very glad to say, stick with it and joined us, and she's been a fantastic add to our culture. And if she'd listened to that friend, she'd have dropped out. If that friend was interviewing, she would have dropped out. My point is that your culture might not be for everybody, but it is going to resonate with the right people. So your hiring process has to be a direct reflection of that culture. And if you've got any areas that you think are a weakness for you or your team, you've got to invest in it, whether you're struggling to retain employees or not. It doesn't just save you money, your employer brand, okay? It makes you money. If you don't invest in your culture and your employer brand, you don't do it because it's a nice to have, because it feels good, okay? You've got to invest in it because it ultimately fuels growth. Getting hiring right, or getting that external perception right for Sam's benefit, it's proactively adding to your bottom line. It makes you money. And just being really honest, that's actually what we're all here to do, isn't it? We're all here to make our businesses money. So very quickly going to wrap up, but before I go, I'd just like to leave you with one final thought. So whilst preparing for this, our co-founder told me something that really rang true to me. He said, you don't lose your worst people, you lose your best people first. So the next time someone asks you why employer brand is important, I want your response to be, tell me why it's not important to your business. So that's me.
Thanks so much, Leanne. That was really, really useful, and hopefully a really useful way of kind of bringing it to life of how you can use that for recruitment. Today, obviously, we've taken you through kind of what basically key takeaways to be that obviously you need to just give a really honest reflection of who you are for that external perception, whether it be to prospective candidates or anyone that's going to be coming across you and working with you. That is how brand works most successfully. Then you're not going to have those holes and that misalignment for trying to present as something that you're absolutely not. So obviously making sure that values are embedded in decision making, like Dave shared before, bringing that to life through content, obviously making sure that we're addressing what stakeholders actually want to know about you from this aspect and sharing it directly to them. And like Leanne's just summarized for us, making sure that it's really authentic, being transparent about it, so that we're making sure that it's all building up a very accurate picture of who you are and how you operate as a business. And making sure that that's embedded throughout the customer journey. When we're saying customer journey, obviously we've got candidates that are joining. We've also got employees that are part of the business already and what their ongoing experience of working with you is like as well. So hopefully today's been really helpful. If you do have any questions, we're happy. I don't know if anyone else needs to jump off, but happy to address now, or feel free to obviously slide into our emails afterwards. So yeah, opportunity for questions if you need it. The dreaded silence. No? Okay, great. Well, we are just going to share a little bit of a takeaway for you. We'll be sharing slides afterwards with you, and there's a nice little 2 things to do next. So we've got a couple of reports to share with you to really help you address your marketing and also look into kind of that purpose and value that we were referencing before. Build is like our workshop arm of the business, and within that takes you through the steps to kind of craft a marketing strategy. It's definitely not like dedicated towards employer brand, but you can apply it to that. The same kind of activities are really useful. So we'll share that over, and I hope today's been really useful. I'd just like to finish up by saying thanks so much to Dave and Leanne. You were excellent, and really appreciate you jumping on, sharing your expertise. and your research as well. It's been really, really useful and kind of given a nice holistic approach of why it's important, how to bring it to life, and also obviously that business case for it as well. So thank you very much, and we'll leave it there. If there's any follow-ups, please do let us know.